ANC spokesperson Mabe says party president Cyril Ramaphosa is walking the talk on accountability. He says the president is committed to returning to the National Assembly to answer questions about the theft at his Phala farm in Limpopo. Former spy boss Arthur Fraser claims that thieves made off with at least $4 million in cash during the incident in February 2020. Mabe also maintaining that Ramaphosa respects parliamentary processes and will return to the National Assembly at the end of the month.
The fact that he has returned to the Speaker is on its own cooperation. All other matters are legal matters. I'm sure that the legal team of the President is well placed to deal with some of those issues. It would be unfair for the ANC to want to take a preemptive gesture on issues that fall outside its own scope. The deadline that the ANC had placed on members was the 3rd of September.
Okay.
And when we reached that deadline of the 3rd of September, we came and pronounced ourselves in the manner that we did as it relates to the National Conference. All other issues that have got to do with the Reserve Bank and the lawyers, we leave it to the rightful institutions to attend to.
Well, despite that vote of confidence today, the South African Reserve Bank has had to give the president yet another extension to give him an opportunity to tell his side of the story. The Financial Surveillance Department has been investigating whether exchange control regulations were flouted during the alleged sale of game on his farm. Our politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo is tracking that story for us. Ziyanda, another extension from the Reserve Bank for the president. Have they given a reason why?
Well, the presidency's spokesperson, that's Vincent Magwenya, spoke to him a short while ago saying, well, this matter is actually being blown out of proportion, really, because it's just a procedural issue in terms of being able to request an extension from the South African Reserve Bank. Initially, the president was supposed to submit answers in late August, and that letter that was sent then to EFF MP flouted, the Reserve Bank had said that it's giving the president until today to respond. But now we understand that it's going to be the 22nd of September when the president will now respond then to those questions. The main tenets or the premise of the questions that the Reserve Bank are seeking answers to are the origins of that foreign currency on the president's farm.
Blown out of proportion? Was the presidency not watching the last sitting of Parliament where this issue became a big contentious one, especially on the part of the opposition? They've been united and speaking in one voice here. This is certainly going to rile them up further.
Absolutely, Kathy. I have no doubt about that. In fact, this second extension is going to be close enough to the time where the president will have to return to the National Assembly to respond to those questions on Phala on the 29th of September. Because you'll recall then how that last sitting, that marathon sitting, actually ended. And so from the side of the presidency, they've got nothing to hide. But we spoke to Themba Gori earlier on, where he basically said, this is a belated, public disclosure of what happened all those years ago. If the information is correct, he asked, why are we still not being taken into confidence as to what exactly happened there? It doesn't matter whether or not it's 4 million rand, 8 million rand. The question here is, why was there so much money stashed underneath the president's mattress? Has he actually followed the correct foreign exchange, the controls? And it's 45 days before. There was an article on News 24 that spoke about having this money at his home 45 days before the actual robbery. So there are a lot of questions that the president needs to respond to. And it seems at this stage, these extensions, including now there's going to be a picket at the Public Protector's office to force her, or well, maybe not say force, but to actually question why that report hasn't been released. It's still going to be a scandal that we're going to be talking about for a long time.
And that's the difficulty about not having credible information about what happened during this robbery, because that space, that vacuum, allows room for speculation. And what South Africans really want here are answers. The Reserve Bank, what have they said about why the president was given another extension? Because they didn't say much to the public the last time round. Surely this time they're aware of the increasing pressure and public perception that the president has been given unfair treatment.
It's so interesting that you asked that, because in its initial letter to Floyd Shivambu, the last sentence on that letter says that it treats all citizens equally and fairly. So they are aware of the implications of granting the president a further extension. However, the Reserve Bank, we reached out to them. They're saying that they're not in a position to comment on an ongoing investigation that they're looking into. And whilst that's okay, but as you've mentioned, the vacuum now has left all sorts of space for opposition parties like the EFF, who've released a scathing statement saying that the police, the public protector, and now the Reserve Bank are giving the president time to actually, mount a cover-up and to find a fall guy for this. Some are saying that the likely person to take the fall is the farm manager, who will be asked why that money was not deposited within the stipulated 30 days, according to our exchange control regulations. So there are lots of questions, and the president, as has been mentioned by another analyst, Kaya Sitolo, to say, this happened more than 2 years ago. So what actually do you need to do? Are you trying to cook up an audit trail now? Why is it that this information is not easily disposable to those who are investigating this matter so that we can all move on?
Ziyanda, it's the kind of press that the president can ill afford on the eve of what is to be an elective conference of his organization, where by all indications he would be wanting to serve yet another term.
Yeah, and interestingly, Themba Godi touched on that to say it would seem at this stage that what we may perceive as dill-daddling is the way in which the president and those around him are testing possible answers and the legality thereof, because whatever the president says to the public protector, it would be dealing with the Executive Executive Members Ethics Act. When you deal with the Reserve Bank, you'd be dealing with why you have so much money. Did you declare that money? Even if, Kathy, for instance, that money came through somebody who bought a game on his farm, did that person, that Sudanese businessman, declare it at the ports of entry of the country and declare what that money was going to be used for? The police themselves, was this burglary declared at the time? It doesn't seem so. So on the eve of this conference, you face the possibility of having a president who's criminally charged, which then puts into effect and triggers then the step-aside principle.
You took the step there, right? Because
yeah,
the issue here is about him being potentially criminally charged, yes, and what then that will mean for the country, but also for the ANC.
Absolutely. I mean, our colleague Kolim Gambi asked this of Gwen Ramakgopa in the SGO to say, has the organization prepared itself for the eventuality of having a sitting president within government and, of course, of the ANC criminally charged for this Phala Phala farm gate, especially because, it would seem, if you look at how the horse trading and the names that are being touted to take over, it doesn't seem for now that there's a strong contender for the president. It seems to be more about the deputy presidency. But are there preparations in place, given how everything is moving? And remember, I think the president has to be very careful here. What he says to the Reserve Bank on the 22nd of September has to match up with how he responds to questions on the 29th of September, when he is before those members of parliament to respond to the scandal. And certainly the picket tomorrow is going to add fuel to the fire in terms of the acting, public protector and how she's going to manage the situation, given the woes that she's facing with the suspended public protector and the implications or the inferences about her suspensions thereof.
Well, pressure absolutely mounting, and the presidency may want to review that phrase, blown out of proportion. It sounds like they're the ones that are not in touch with how this story is actually developing in the country. That's our politics reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, with the latest on the Phala Phala scandal.